Live in Southern California, this is Channel 4 News at 4.
Mr. Simpson, do you understand the charges as I've read them to you?
Yes.
And have you discussed those charges with your lawyer, sir?
Yes.
At this time, do you wish to enter a plea guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
The arraignment of O.J. Simpson, yet another surreal image in this incredible story. The former star running back, haggard and tired looking, answering to murder charges. Hello, everyone. I'm Kathy Barra, in for Kelly Lang.
I'm Chuck Henry. Our top story at 4 o'clock, the O.J. Simpson arraignment. It's the first good look that we've had at O.J. Simpson since the wild odyssey that ended in his arrest on Friday. Well, today, O.J. Simpson entered a plea, as you heard, of not guilty to two charges of murder. The day started out with Simpson's arrival at the courthouse in this white jail van. At the end of the day, here is the latest. A preliminary hearing is set for June the 30th. Prosecutors say that they will try to prove premeditation. And Simpson's lawyer says that he will consider every possible defense strategy. That's the situation. Fernell Chapman is over at the courthouse this afternoon with a full report on all that went on inside the courtroom. Fernell?
Well, Chuck, actually, I am here at the L.A. County Jail where O.J. Simpson has been returned following a brief appearance in court today. He's being housed here in a high-security area and remains under a suicide watch by jail personnel. During his arraignment in court today, O.J. Simpson still maintains that he is innocent. Simpson was aboard this van when he was taken from county jail to court. The route used for his 2-mile trip through the downtown L.A. area was kept secret to minimize potential problems along the way. In court, Simpson appeared to be in a daze, at times with his eyes closed even while standing. His attorney says the former NFL superstar is deeply depressed and still on medication. Simpson was arraigned on 2 counts of murder, which could mean the death penalty if convicted.
Mr. Simpson, do you understand the charges as I've read them to you?
Yes.
And have you discussed those charges with your lawyer, sir?
Yes.
At this time, do you wish to enter a plea guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
Simpson was arraigned before Judge Patty Jo McKay, who received 5 specific requests from Simpson's lawyer. First, the defense asked for copies of all coroner reports and access to the coroner's office. Simpson's lawyer also asked for access to all scientific and physical evidence, as well as LAPD reports about the murders of Nicole Simpson and her friend Ron Goldman. The defense requested visitation rights inside the county jail, as well as a special cervical pillow, because Simpson has been having difficulty sleeping. It was also requested that Simpson's personal doctor be allowed to re-examine him once again. The arraignment was brief. After entering his not guilty pleas, O.J. Simpson was escorted from the courtroom, then returned to the L.A. County Jail. Now, ruling on those requests by the defense are scheduled on Wednesday, and O.J.'s preliminary hearing is now set for June 30th. He remains in custody, meanwhile, here at the county jail without bail. Simpson's lawyer, meanwhile, Robert Shapiro, held a news conference this afternoon, and he was questioned about the defense strategy. We'll have more on that on the Channel 4 News at 5. Live from the county jail, I'm Fernell Chapman. Now back to the studio.
Fernell, thank you. Now that Simpson has been arraigned, we turn to the legal issues. How will each side develop its case? We have coverage from both camps. Phil Schuman at the Criminal Courts Building on the prosecution, and Colleen Williams up in the newsroom with a look at the defense. We're going to go first now to Phil Schuman. Phil?
Well, clearly all of the attention focused on the O.J. Simpson case has put it in a class by itself. Still, the prosecution is determined that they will treat this case just like any other, a double homicide, someone in custody being charged. They say they will be very fair, very methodical, and very thorough. District Attorney Gil Garcetti on this morning's Today Show talking about the case against O.J. Simpson.
Who knows, if several months before we have the complete evidence, we will then make an informed judgment as to whether in this case Mr. Simpson deserves the death penalty.
As for details of the case Garcetti's office plans to present in court, prosecutors not divulging much beyond what we already know. That Simpson is charged with 2 counts of murder, that he's said to have used a knife that still hasn't been recovered. Prosecutors will claim the murders were premeditated or planned. As for the evidence against Simpson, blood found on the ground and on gloves at the murder scene, at his house and hotel room. In addition, we know police have interviewed at least one person who may have placed O.J. Simpson's vehicle at the crime scene. As to what other evidence, if any, there is against Simpson, prosecutors David Kahn and Marcia Clark, in a brief appearance to answer reporters' questions, wouldn't get specific.
We have to have enough evidence to convict him before we file the case. The fact that the case has been filed means that we do have sufficient evidence to convict him.
The district attorneys did reveal, though, that their investigation is continuing, but O.J. Simpson is the only suspect. They don't believe anyone else was involved. They also repeated the possibility that O.J.'s much publicized freeway chase could ultimately backfire on him.
Evidence of flight is always admissible in a crime to show consciousness of guilt. So we may be able to present that evidence before a jury to show that there was a consciousness of guilt on the part of the defendant at that time.
Now, just from that picture taken in the lobby of the criminal courts building, you can see all of the media attention focused on the brief appearance by the two prosecutors today. Clearly, everything they do will be under the microscope. Also, everything that they have in the way of evidence must by law be turned over to the defense to help the defense prepare its case. The same does not hold true in the reverse. Reporting live from the downtown criminal courts building, Phil Schuman, Channel 4 News. Chuck, Kathy?
Phil, do you have any information about possibly this going before a grand jury?
Well, it is before the grand jury as we speak, although the prosecutors won't comment on that. If a grand jury indictment is handed down, it would in effect supersede the criminal charges that the district attorney has already filed. And if a grand jury indictment is handed down, it would eliminate by law the need for a preliminary hearing. So that's why the grand jury indictment is a possibility.
All right, thanks a lot, Phil. As for the defense, the focus now shifts to the man who is defending Simpson, attorney Robert Shapiro. Colleen Williams looks at the posturing that began in the courtroom today. Colleen?
Kathy, this morning the defense attorney Robert Shapiro received a 25-page report regarding the evidence and the charges against his client. As he appeared in court behind the scenes, O.J. Simpson's defense attorney was already working on the defense strategy.
In America, we have the presumption of innocence, not the assumption of guilt.
He is the one person key to the defense of O.J. Simpson. Attorney Robert Shapiro stood beside his client in court today as the former football great pleaded not guilty to murder.
That you did use a deadly and dangerous weapon, a knife.
At this point, Shapiro insists he is still formulating his defense strategy as well as his defense team. But we do know two things. He will be the lead attorney, and secondly, he has enlisted the aid of two top forensic experts. Dr. Henry Lee will head up the criminology team, working with Dr. Michael Baden from the New York Police Department.
I haven't reviewed any of the evidence.
Evidence or not, one of Shapiro's first moves today was to press for a preliminary hearing within 10 days. Some view this strategy as a way to put the DA in a time bind, so they have less time to prepare the case and finish the investigation.
This is an absolute legal right to have a preliminary hearing within 10 days if somebody is in custody. We are exercising that right.
Until then, Shapiro's job is to portray his client in the best possible light. At a news conference this afternoon, Shapiro painted a picture of a very distraught O.J. Simpson, who spoke with his children on Father's Day and prayed with the Reverend Billy Graham. Shapiro also talked about Simpson's failure to surrender on Friday and the chase from Orange County to Brentwood.
O.J. had no intention whatsoever of leaving the city, the state, or the country. He was going to the graveside of his wife.
The preliminary hearing is scheduled for June 30th. Between now and then, Shapiro will examine the evidence. Keep in mind, most of that evidence has been unavailable to him until now, and he will be working to put together the defense team. You can expect to see at least one more attorney, perhaps more, involved in this case. Kathy, Chuck, back to you.
Thanks, Colleen. Now, as the Simpson-Goldman murder case begins its legal journey through our judicial system, there is still the matter of the murder weapon. Prosecutors say that it is a knife, but it hasn't been found yet. Last Thursday, the LAPD detectives seen here used metal detectors to search a field in Chicago near a hotel where O.J. Simpson had checked into 4 days earlier. Today, the hotel was searched a second time, and what was found could be a new piece of evidence, if anything at all was found. Phil Rogers is live on the scene and has the latest from Chicago. Phil?
Chuck, by way of orientation, the O'Hare Plaza Hotel where O.J. stayed is just behind the camera. These woods behind us here are the area that a witness supposedly said he saw someone resembling O.J. the night of the murder. Now, police returned to these woods and spent a great deal of time there today, this time with trained tracking dogs. We're told they came here today with some very specific items in mind, and that this time they just may have found something.
There's no way to tell at this point because they're wet. They have to dry, then they have to be dealt with very carefully, and that's why we have the crime lab out here to ensure that we preserve the evidence properly. And if it is good evidence, we certainly don't want to be criticized for mishandling it later, so we're going to take every precaution that's necessary.
Now, what he was talking about there was what they found in the woods today, and it was two items. They found a pair of socks and an empty duffel bag. They said that the tracking dogs went straight to those items. They had an immense amount of interest in those. There was no way to tell if there were signs of blood on those items, but again, they were wet. And he said that they will want to know what the crime lab is able to come with on them. Now, one other thing. Back in those woods today, the dogs did have a lot of interest in other areas, what they refer to as hot spots. They'll be going back into that area maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow. We can tell you that in the past, we've been told that tracking dogs do some of their best work when the ground is wet. The LA detectives making clear they're not done in these woods yet. Phil Rogers reporting live in Chicago. Back to you.
Phil, I'm a little unclear as to where you are. Is this near the hotel or is it on the way between the hotel and the airport?
Chuck, if I can show you real quickly, I can actually orient you completely. The hotel, the O'Hare Plaza Hotel, is immediately behind us here. Now, you see it there just across the street from the woods. That's the hotel where O.J. Simpson spent the night after he flew into Chicago the night the murder took place. These woods are actually directly across the street to the south, and again, this is the area where a witness, supposedly at the gas station over there on the corner, said that he saw someone resembling O.J. Simpson walking into the area on the morning after the murder.
Great, that clears it up. Thank you, Phil, for that live report.
Well, he's already spent 3 nights there. Coming out the place O.J. Simpson is currently calling home now, just what kind of cell he's going to have and what some of the prisoners think about this case.
And O.J. Simpson's mother, you may have seen her Friday at her son's mansion. Now she's in the hospital. The latest on her condition coming up.
A little bit later, the letter O.J. Simpson wrote in his own hand. Now, what it says about him, this case, and his relationship with his late ex-wife. The Simpson letter is next. Once O.J. Simpson's brief court appearance was over today, he was returned to county jail the same way he came. He left the downtown criminal courts building in his white sheriff's van about 12:45 this afternoon. There was an escort car in front and in back. Across the street, a small group of supporters cheered as this van rolled by. In a few minutes, Simpson was back at the jail facility where he remains right now. Doug Kriegel has more on the kind of conditions he faces there.
The sign outside says Inmate Reception Center, but when O.J. Simpson was taken inside, you can see there's no doubt this is a jail. What about other inmates who were near O.J.? This man, James Young, was just released this morning. How do the inmates feel about O.J.?
They kind of upset about the fact they gave him too much leeway by being a celebrity star, giving him the, caravan ride to his house. Because they feel that if they were in the car, that they would have shot the car down and basically threw him out the car, arresting him. But, they let O.J. go home and get his glass of orange juice.
Simpson will be allowed a limited number of visitors. He will also be able to watch television, read books, and exercise. But Simpson will spend most of his time in that suicide-proof cell.
Mr. Simpson has all of the privileges that other inmates have in there. The big difference in his case is his movement, his free movement around the jail is restricted. He gets phone calls, he gets exercise, he has the ability to get food from the jail store if he wants, magazines, that type of thing.
Tonight, O.J. Simpson will be spending his 4th night inside the L.A. County Jail. Simpson will be allowed 1 visitor per day, in addition to his attorney and psychiatrist. Doug Kriegel, Channel 4 News, downtown Los Angeles.
And while at the jail, Simpson remains under medication and under a psychiatrist's care. Chuck?
The arrest of O.J. Simpson has sent relatives, friends, and fans into an emotional tailspin. His mother remains in a San Francisco hospital this afternoon in fair but stable condition. This is his mother, Eunice Simpson, leaving her son's Brentwood mansion last week. Mrs. Simpson was admitted to California Pacific Medical Center on Friday. Doctors say an existing heart condition flared up. Mrs. Simpson is 72 years old, and she lives up in the San Francisco Bay Area. No word yet on when she'll be released from the hospital. Kathy?
Now it is the clue that put police hot on O.J. Simpson's trail. Coming up, the thing that started off this pursuit, how police got in touch with the driver of this white Bronco.
I'm coming up the 5 freeway. Okay. Right now we are okay, but you gotta tell the police to just back off. He's still alive, that he got a gun to his head.
Plus, Simpson's attorney for the first time today offers an explanation as to why Simpson failed to turn himself in, where he was going in that pursuit.
Then a picturesque lake turns into a living nightmare. A lightning storm strikes. Now the fatal mistake one family made.
Deadly lightning strikes have hit cities from Oklahoma to New York. 8 people were killed in the past week. The biggest single tragedy, that is, happened in Virginia. Like these boaters, a West Virginia family was spending the weekend at Moomaw Lake. Suddenly, thunderstorm prompted them to make a fatal mistake. They took shelter in a grove of trees.
There was a small group of pine trees with one of the larger pines had been struck by the lightning, and they were all huddled close to it.
The badly burned bodies of 5 victims were found on Friday afternoon. Fortunately, in Orlando, Florida, the weather hasn't been deadly. It's just been hot. 90-degree plus temperature, making practice extra tough for some soccer teams taking part in the World Cup games. Players from places like Belgium and Great Britain are used to weather that's about 30 degrees cooler. High temperatures and humidity has gripped much of the Northeast, but forecasters say that relief is in sight. Kathy?
And warm temperatures helped fan a fire here that blackened 2 acres of brush in Agoura Hills this afternoon. The fire, seen here from our Channel 4 helicopter, broke out shortly after 2 this afternoon in grass and oak trees in the 5700 block of Toth Place. County Fire declared a second alarm, and units moved in quickly to keep the flames away from homes. The fire was contained just over an hour ago, and ground crews are still at the scene. They're making sure there are no more hot spots. There were no injuries and no damage to any structures from this fire. Chuck?
Now let's get a late update on the traffic outside, and for that, as always, we go to Paul Johnson in Metro Traffic. Hi, Paul.
Hi, Chuck. Might be a good idea if we take a look downtown, see if you're going to be a little late getting out of the area, down to your home. Let's turn on that jam cam. Southbound Harbor Freeway moving well, but it's the northbound side. You are jammed solid now as you make the transition to the Pasadena Hollywood Freeway. Give yourself a little extra time. Be patient on your way home. Now, we have a couple of SIG alerts still clearing. One is in Pico Rivera, 605 freeway northbound at Beverly Boulevard. The right lane and the off-ramp are closed. Have an accident involving a big rig that just split in two. Northbound, you're jammed back to the 105. Southbound, slowing back to the Pomona Freeway. Second SIG alert in Glen Avon, Highway 60 eastbound past Pedley. We have the right lane shut down. Overturned trailer. That is in the final clearing stages, but you're slow back to Etiwanda. And finally in Diamond Bar on the Pomona Freeway eastbound at the 57. Accident with a couple of big rigs. Now the 2 right lanes are blocked off. Oil in the roadway as well. You're going to find traffic heavy back toward Azusa. Please just buckle up and drive carefully. Paul Johnson, Metro Traffic. Kathy, Chuck.
All right. Thanks a lot, Paul. Still to come, an emotional note left by O.J. Simpson. You may have heard it read Friday or over the weekend. Now the clues the note may hold about O.J. Simpson, his state of mind, and the relationship with his ex-wife.
Also, you're going to meet the couple that spotted the white Ford Bronco before anyone else. Now, the one thing that told them it was O.J. Simpson.
Because I knew that there was an all-points bulletin and out for that car, so I was looking for it. Well, we weren't looking for it, you know. But I mean, once I saw it, I knew I had to do the right thing.
And a little bit later on, the throngs of curious starstruck onlookers coming up nearly 3 days after O.J. Simpson's arrest. They keep coming. Why? The story is next.